Welcome to the Prodigal and the Priest podcast, a podcast about faith, sports, and two friends from different cultures. Here are your hosts, Joey Scansella and Father Paul Bechter.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whoever is listening. Maybe this is their bedtime routine. Who knows? How's it going, Father Paul?
It's going good. How are you doing, Joey?
Doing all right? You enjoy your vacation?
Yeah, man. I was just scrolling through all the stuff that I have to take care of now that I'm back from vacation.
Yeah. Sacraments, check.
Yeah, not much. Not that much stuff. Apparently I wasn't missed.
You were missed.
Yeah, it was a great vacation, though. Thank you for asking.
Are you allowed to divulge where you went, what you did? I think we divulged a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I went and I played some golf. We played 8 rounds in 5 days.
Whoa.
Which was a
lowest
lot.
Score.
81. Should have broken 80 that day. But it was fun. It was a good chance to get outside for long periods of time.
Yeah.
In various weather conditions.
Nice.
And play some pretty bad golf on some pretty beautiful days.
Nice courses?
Yeah. Nice and cheap courses, too.
Yeah.
Public
Can't complain.
courses, munis. Yeah, it was great.
Nice. Well, while you were gone, we tried to make do. So I had my wife. That was good. That was awesome.
Listened. Yeah.
Talked about living that life in ministry in the church. Then we had Greg, who you supervise. What'd you think of his question answering?
I thought he did a very good job. And he also knew how many wounds Christ had.
Whatever.
5.
He didn't even know, though, they represented that. So I pointed that out.
Buttons here, which I don't have.
Okay.
But then there's 33. There's a lot more than 5 buttons.
Right.
That go
So
down
I
like this.
pointed out the fact that the buttons had a significance, and he was like, "Whoa, really?" I was like, "Yeah, what are they teaching you in seminary?" It's because
Amateur hour.
I know how much Christ was really wounded for our sins that I always think it's more
6
than
to 7 times.
Yeah. Well, 7's
You
a
were
perfect number.
inconsistent. No, y'all did a great job. And it was one of the first times I've ever listened to our podcast. So
How'd you think he did on the priest forgiveness question? Can a priest absolve himself?
I thought he did well. He had a nice take on it. He
Yeah.
framed it well, made good distinctions.
I thought he did good.
Yeah. He'll be all right.
He'll be all right. With some work, I think he can really get somewhere in this diocese.
I guess I'm primed to go on vacation again pretty soon. And then you can give him another pass.
Right. I would say I'm primed for another child, but hopefully not anytime soon.
No, not in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did not speak into the mic.
No,
when I
you
said
didn't.
that. Well, I want to talk about something a little bit heavier today.
Good. Okay.
And I have a little bit more, I think, of the substance or take on it and would like your opinion on some things.
Yeah.
But I know this is something we often deal with in youth ministry, and you deal with a lot, which is dealing with people in crisis.
Yeah.
Dealing with people who have gone through hard things in their life, tough experiences, grief, loss, pain, suffering, all of it.
Yeah.
This topic came up because October 15th was the National Infant Loss Miscarriage Remembrance Day.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a mass here in commemoration.
Yes. And, you know, on that day, I see so many people post on social media accounts, different things like that, all the losses they've had that a lot of times people don't know about with miscarriages or losses in pregnancy and throughout that. And as you all know who have listened to this podcast, part of my story is that me and my wife, we had a daughter who passed away from an undiagnosed heart condition, 16 days old. And I think one of the most valuable things I learned from that time, and it often people say, oh, it must be easy for you because you speak about it and you talk about it and you talk about her and you talk about your family. No, not a day goes by that it's easy. Not a day goes by that it's not challenging. But I really do believe that God put Nikki and I here to speak into that challenge, because there are people that never get out of the despair from loss, from grief, from crisis, all of that. And so I wanted to speak to a few things that have stuck out to me over time, and I want to hear your opinion on it as well, of how to care for people in time of crisis. How to care for people. How do you feel about that?
I like it. It's a good topic.
Yeah. Well, so I'll start off. I remember right after Kiara passed away, one of the biggest things anybody did for me in that time was just their ministry of presence. So one of the things I want to encourage in time of crisis, pain, loss, suffering, grief, and this could apply to anything: loss of, somebody passing away, loss of life, loss of job. I mean, whatever, pandemic, any of those things that we're going through, is the ministry of presence, that someone took their time to actually come and see us and visit us and talk with us and see how we're doing. I think nowadays the temptation is that in this digital age, it's just as easy to shoot a text message off and say, how are you doing? But they actually wanted to just be with us. And there wasn't a lot I wanted to say. There wasn't a lot I wanted to talk about. They couldn't say anything to make it better. But just their presence there was a blessing.
Yeah, that's
actually... what's your experience of that?
Well, a couple things. So, first, I forget the exact wording of it, but it's one of the... I guess it would be a spiritual work of mercy. I think it's consoling the grieving or consoling the sorrowing, something like that. But doing just what you said, like being there for somebody. We learned a lot about this kind of stuff in seminary, but I've honestly only had maybe a year and a half now at this parish of direct experience with it. And so it's still pretty limited, and I feel like I'm still trying to figure out a lot of things. Yeah. They did make it very clear every time this came up to tell us, you're going to want to give advice to people, or to say, or to start comparing it with your own situation. And they said, that's not helpful. Just be there for them, which is a hard thing. The times I've tried to do that, I do want to fix things. Yeah. And I do think that, oh, I've got this situation in my life that if I share that, maybe it'll make somebody, and it doesn't land well for the person who's grieving. Right. When you do that, and because you end up making it about yourself. Right. One of the examples I've seen, I don't want to give away the details, but basically I know somebody who fairly recently drove a decent distance to go and be with someone who they knew was struggling, not grieving in particular from a particular crisis, but just down. Yeah. And I think you have to know somebody well to be able to do that. Just drop in on them, because that could, not end well. But this person really just took charge of the situation when they got there. Just hey, I brought food. Hey, I brought this. We're going to go and do this thing. And they were able to help this person sort of in a limited capacity. Yeah. But it was just a really good, I know I'm being vague about it, but it was just a really good example of what that ministry of presence can look like. It doesn't mean only going to just sit with somebody. Right. You can go and bring them food, or go and say, we're going to go to the store. Right. Because you need groceries. Let's go. Right. And that kind of thing, I think, can really help get people out of a momentary or a prolonged state of depression. It can at least help. Yeah. I remember one of my friends that lived in Coppell, so it wasn't like he was driving far distance, but would text me and be like, hey, are you up for a visit? Can I come, hang out with you,
talk, chat, watch the game, whatever. Just spend time. Little did I know until later on. Every time he sent that text, he was like right down the street because he wanted to be ready to like jump in, be right there. And so one of the first things I just say is be present in whatever way. You know, second big thing, and I jotted down 4 or 5 things, and like I said, we can bounce off and share different ideas. And you mentioned one about meals, but the second, and you've mentioned, but I want to reiterate, resist the urge to say something profound. Mm-hmm. The amount of times that people were well-intentioned, but want to be like, well, you got an angel now. Well, you have such strong faith, stronger than me. That's why God chose you. Or like things that you wonder, I don't really think you know how that sounds. Mm-hmm. We want to say something. We want to say the most profound thing that will get them out of this rut, out of this thing. And it doesn't exist. It does not exist. It's not going to happen. And I think the people that I respected the most during that time that we were going through said, I don't know what you're going through. I've never experienced that loss. I'm here for you. I love you. I care about you. Mm-hmm. You know, I think especially as Americans, we are terrible at this one. And I never thought about this until we experienced loss ourselves, Nikki and I, because I was one of those as a minister. I'm like, I'm going to say something to this kid to change their life. You know, they're going through this grief, this thing. Mm-hmm. I wonder, I don't know, how is it for you as a priest? And I mean, you talk with people during a lot of highs and lows and things.
Oh, yeah. And I have been thrown into some very, very dark lows for people, like acute moments of crisis.
Right.
But more often it's kind of a gradual thing. And so the weird thing is they come to me for advice, but you also have to kind of read between the lines. Like often they're coming because no one else will listen and they just need to be heard and then directed towards Christ in some kind of generic way, right? Where it's not, this is something that they also taught us in seminary and made very clear, but I've experienced from almost day one here. Like, I am not a licensed counselor. I do not know what I'm doing on that psychological level outside of just common sense and intuition and whatever the truths of the faith provide to that. Like, I can give, I guess, more developed spiritual counsel, but you're normally working through like a very human issue to even get to that point. Yeah. And so it's a lot of listening, but just to comment a little bit on just this phenomenon of like wanting to fix it or wanting to say something profound is the way you said it. Like if you look at the book of Job, that's what Job's friends are doing. Like they're there. It's ministry of presence. He's sitting on the ash heap, scraping himself with the potsherd, just having a terrible time. And they show up like they're good friends. And then there's, this threefold cycle of speeches where they are trying to just explain it. You must have done something wrong. We know that God is just. Or like they're saying kind of true things.
Right.
The book of Job's a little different because he actually is innocent. And so it's more like on the inscrutability of suffering than it is on like suffering as a direct punishment for sinfulness. Right. But we know that, our sinfulness does bring about suffering too. So it's not against that message. Anyway, point is like they're all trying to explain it and it's not helpful. And God even says so at the end. He's like, y'all, you need to ask Job to go pray for you because you were not correctly representing me. And that's just, I don't think many people sit down and like slog through the book of Job. It is very repetitive once it gets into the speeches, but the first time I read it was when I was at UD as a lay student. We had to read it for our Lit Trad 3 class. And like to just sit down. It may take you a couple days or something, unless you just have a few hours to read directly. But to sit down and read through that, not all of it will make sense, but there's not really a better commentary out there on suffering and the problem of evil and our relationship with God and all of it.
Right.
And we had a tremendous class when I was further along in seminary on the wisdom literature. And our teacher really went, explained the book of Job like I'd never heard it before. And it made a big impact on all of us, but in particular, I have a friend who was going through a lot right then, who was in that class, and like it made a tremendous impact on him. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's required reading for all of us, whether we're in a situation of crisis or depression or suffering somehow ourselves right now, or just for the sake of trying to prepare for how we can help people when those situations arise.
Yeah, I remember Nikki and I, very surreal looking back, having to pick out the headstone, to your child. And I remember us going back and forth saying, what do we want on this? And it's interesting you bring up Job, because we put a verse from Job on her headstone, which was Job 1:21, you give, you take away, blessed be the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And we really, thought about that and tried to let that be our prayer, to say, we know everything we get is God's, everything he gives us. And so, but blessed be the name of the Lord, that no matter what we go through, we can always speak the praises of God's name on our lips. And so, yeah, I think with that, it's resist that urge to say the thing that you think is going to be so profound to change somebody's life. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And most likely, if you're Catholic as well, it's going to be bad theology. How many people said to me, well, you got an angel now? I'm like, well, no, theologically, all the angels ever were already created. You don't want to go into that. I was just more annoyed by it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but like, and I have not been in that position that you're describing. I've gone through certain types of suffering in my life, but not like that.
And we all have. And I don't want somebody to be like, well, I've never gone to. We all have something.
Yeah, we're not playing that game right now. But sorry, thought just left me.
No problem. You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was I going to say?
I don't know. When you get it, you can come back to it. But two other things I have that really stuck out to me when I was thinking about this topic. And you also hit on another one when you talked about bringing a meal, which is see what the needs are of the person in crisis and help fulfill them. People rallied around us, knowing as a youth minister, I make a ton of money. I know. But they knew that. That's a joke right there.
You couldn't hear my smirk.
That's right. They knew a funeral would be expensive. All these expenses that come with that, medical costs that came with, everything. I mean, our community group rallied around us and started a GoFundMe. People started a meal calendar. People started a prayer chain and those spiritual prayer bouquets of giving up acts of, worship for us.
Mm-hmm.
They found the need, whatever it was, and identified that. I had people willing who, I had to deal with insurance places, and I had to deal with, okay, well, we just got her birth certificate, and then you have to, death certificate. Like, I had people who didn't just say, oh, hey, whatever you need, because that's nice.
Yeah, but not helpful.
But actually, people were like, let me do this for you. And who did it? And whatever, you may have a specialty. One friend comes to mind. I don't think he necessarily listens to the podcast, so I'm going to mention it. But I remember there was a whole discrepancy from the GoFundMe with our taxes when we filed them, because the taxes, the IRS wanted to say, oh, we had this extra income. And it was like, no, this was a donation from a GoFundMe. Here's my daughter passed away, all this. I was so overwhelmed with it. I was like, I'm going to owe these taxes. What am I going to do? I don't have the money for the taxes. This was just to help pay for this tragedy. And he's like, let me write something. Let me deal with it. Let me do it. And he did. We all have different skill sets that we can help in certain aspects. It might be that you enjoy things like that. Like, let me talk to the insurance company for you. Let me fight that battle for you. Let me bring a meal. Let me organize that. Identify what the need is in somebody going through a crisis and actually go fill that need. Any reflections on that point?
I mean, not really, actually. like that's what I was getting at with the story of my friend who went and did that. Like identifying a need and then actually going and doing it is so much more useful than like whatever I can do to help. I did think of the thing that I forgot though.
Go for it.
Which is like we do have a need to grieve. And I think the awkwardness of grief and of suffering can cause people to want to be able to fix it, to get rid of the awkwardness. And like, it's actually unhelpful in that way. And I think that's why when someone's grieving, and even if the thing is correct that they're being told and isn't bad theology, that it's just kind of irritating, right? Because it's like, just give me time to grieve this. I need to. That's something I try and say at funerals a lot, is that on a human level, we need this. I don't think Americans in general, culturally, grieve communally very well.
Yeah.
I've seen it in Israel, for instance. Like there's sort of customs which are almost laws built in to assist everyone and to kind of protect the grieving process. So like you have to grieve for a certain amount of days, and you sit in your house and do pretty much nothing but grieve for those days, and people are kind of required to come and visit you but not for too long. And it's kind of awesome. Like we don't have anything like that I know of.
Right.
Culturally even.
No.
And so we feel awkward about it because we don't know what to do.
Yeah, you brought up that point. We researched a lot, or I did, at least after, on cultural, how cultures handle grieving. And that whole point, I mean, similar in Africa, they'll spend like 6 days in a row of having people out and near the body and different things to just go through that grief. And here in America, I can't tell you the amount of people that were just like, well, God will give you more. He'll take care of you. You know, and it goes to all these things.
Trying to skip to the end.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, I know I trust in our Lord. Thank God I do, because I would be in a gutter somewhere and be terribly off. I trust in God. But just sit with me in this. Just sit with me in this. And there's tons more things I could emphasize. One other last one, though, is pray and follow up. So many people didn't just say, hey, I'm praying for you, but they took the time to right then and there pray with me. And the second is follow up. In the same sense of grief, the hardest time, a counselor told us afterwards, because Nikki and I went to marriage counseling because we saw all the statistics about, you experience the loss of a child, your divorce rate goes up, all these things. You can play the blame game. We're like, we're going to make sure our marriage is strong, tight. We want to see a counselor. Counselor actually said, I want you to wait to come see me because really you're so busy these first months after dealing with a loss, a tragedy, whatever, PTSD, that it's not until really month 6 through 9 that it all really hits you. And by that time, most of the support is gone. And that's why I say follow up. It's not that week, that next few days, those next few weeks, they're going to be bombarded with people reaching out. How are you doing? How are you doing? But then it's the 6 months, 9 months, year later, second year, third year, to remind people, how are you doing now? So I say, pray with them in the moment and then say, so yeah, go.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question.
Oh,
for once. Because I think a hesitation from a lot of people on following up in that way is not wanting to reopen an old wound that seems like it's healed. Right. And so for you as a father who lost your baby when she was 16 days old,
mm-hmm.
like for somebody to be like, hey man, I know it's been a long time since we talked, just to say, shoot you an email or give you a phone call.
Yeah.
Hey, I know it's been a long time, but I was thinking of you the other day and I just wanted to check in. Like, how are you doing? Since that point.
Yeah.
And that might even be awkward like me and like not want to name it exactly. Right. Like, is that helpful, the kind of follow-up you're talking about?
100%.
And so this fear of like,
it is all put
not wanting to
yeah.
touch the thing that might hurt.
I don't know where that came from, but
Mm-hmm.
thank you for pointing it out. I don't know. I think it's from the enemy to not put us back in that relationship and say, it's better unspoken. Just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to say I know my true friends. This sounds really harsh, but the friends that reach out to me on Kiara's, anniversary of her death or her birthday or moments like that, I know our friendship goes deep because they're reaching out to me on a day that's hard, and that is not reopening a wound. They're not saying, hey,
mm-hmm.
tell me everything that happened or this, but that check-in, I mean, it gets you through some of the hardest times in your life,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I think that is I love that you made that point. I think it is a huge lie that our culture is set to say, just don't poke the bear. You're going to wake it up,
Right.
No. I don't know. Speak the unspoken. Ask it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe a lot of those people are still struggling and want to talk about it. And respect if they're like, yeah, I am doing okay, or I'm okay. I don't want to talk.
Yeah, if they obviously, don't want to go into it.
But most of the time they do.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time they do. So, those are just some things I was reflecting upon. Like I said, I saw the thing about national, infant loss and pregnancy loss. And I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like what we pointed out today as Americans, we're terrible at grief and we're terrible at supporting people through this. And so, I don't know. Any final thoughts on it?
It's the feast day of St. Paul of the Cross, just to date when we're recording this.
Yeah.
And he was completely dedicated to the passion of the Lord, and saw it as the salvific path for us. Which means that our path to salvation is in a real way a path of pain. And I think that we're afraid of pain, of causing pain to ourselves and especially of causing any pain to others. And I think that's a significant component of a lot of these items that we've talked about, like do's and don'ts, is not wanting to cause pain to others by misstepping. And so actually not like taking a step that we should take in charity, to help people. So St. Paul of the Cross, pray for us, intercede for us that we might have a deep and authentic love of the cross and the saving passion of Christ.
So let's do this. Anything, we normally do our closing, statements, but I'm interested in, I know. I'm interested. Let's switch it up a little bit. What's one book you would recommend to somebody going through suffering or crisis or that?
There is a book, it's specifically about depression, but it's a book called The Catholic Guide to Depression. And it's co-authored by somebody and Monsignor John Syack. And he taught me while I was in seminary, and his course was fantastic. And so he provided like the theological content for the book. And I've just skimmed it. I haven't honestly, I haven't gone deep into it, but I know people who have read it and it's helped them.
Yeah.
And in skimming it, I was like, this is a good resource.
Yeah. I also like, for myself, something I read, Making Sense Out of Suffering by Dr. Peter Crift.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah, just explains it and walks through it with people instead of, just that big question. Why do we suffer? Why do we have to suffer? So I guess the close, what are you thinking? We'll skip the watch. We'll combine the watching and the reading into that. And what are you thinking?
That maybe I should read Making Sense Out of Suffering to help me deal with the way the Cowboys are playing right now. Like, it is atrocious.
That was rough last night.
Yeah.
I mean, so we record this on Tuesday. That's why I say last night.
Yeah. Monday night game, Zeke, 2 fumbles. I didn't watch much of the game, but the play where I turned it on was like, I don't know, it's like 1st and 10. It was like the beginning of the drive after a kickoff reception. And I think it was a play action. Kyler Murray throws it like 60 yards down the field for a touchdown.
Oh, my gosh.
To go up 14-0 at that point. Disgraceful.
And it's not like I could even talk any better.
Because we're still winning NFC East.
Isn't that crazy?
Like 2-4?
I
think we're 2-4.
It must be.
And y'all are like 1-4-1.
Yeah, something. And what does that make us, a half game out or something?
NFC
least. Oh my gosh.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, now that you say that, now I'm thinking all of that. No, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking that for anybody that is suffering in any of these ways, or has gone through some type of loss, you're not alone. And the church is here for you, and we're here for you. And, if you need somebody to talk to, reach out, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
All right, man.
All right.
It's a good thought.
Left the volume a little high there. Boom. There you go.
Strong.
So, hey, make sure to reach out to us, prodigalandthepriest@gmail.com with any questions, and stannparish.org/PTP. Take care.
God bless.